Joining us right now is Fox News military analyst General Jack Keane. General, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Maria.
Secretary Mattis called Kim Jong-un's regime a clear and present danger to all. He said this is the main worry right now. First off, do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, he characterized it as the most dangerous and urgent security threat the United States is facing. And what's got everybody's attention is just the incredibly accelerated ballistic missile pace that Kim Jong-un is on. And with the rhetoric that he talks about, the reckless rhetoric, when we've all heard it, because he talks about those missiles being used against our allies in the region, against U.S. bases in the region, and against the continental United States itself. And he's backing that up by the development of missiles that can do that. So he's developing intercontinental ballistic missile to reach the United States. He's already developed medium-range ballistic missiles that reach our bases, and he has already developed and tested a submarine-launched ballistic missile that obviously could sail a submarine close to the shore of the United States and fire the missile from there. So this is all very real capability, matched with the rhetoric and the pace that he's on, has got everybody concerned.
So what do you think the U.S. should be doing about this right now?
Well, what we have largely done, we've got a diplomatic option that we've given the Chinese to execute. And what they're trying to do is impose some sanctions. Chinese president, U.S. president have agreed that China will take a role here that they have not in the past. Now, remember, China has tolerated the development of nuclear weapons in North Korea for years. They have tolerated ballistic missiles for years. And some of the ballistic missiles that the North Koreans have, Maria, look remarkably similar to China's ballistic missiles. So obviously these are very close allies. It remains to be seen whether China is truly going to impose sanctions on North Korea that would get their attention enough for them to stop this program and denuclearize. I'm highly skeptical of that actually happening. I worry that the Chinese are very clever. They've gamed our previous presidents, and they may be gaming this one. Now, I'm not suggesting that President Trump and his team doesn't know what's going on. They certainly do, and they have the same skepticism that I have. So they're going to watch this very closely to see if they're really going to come through or not. And if not, then we're going to have to get really tough on sanctions with North Korea. And there's not much you can get to with them because it's such a closed society. We also probably have to start sanctioning China. And so this is going to get pretty tough if China doesn't help us out here.
So you would say then that if we were to see sanctions against China as a result of their failure to help in some of these situations, I mean, that could really turn the relationship, though, right? I mean, that's an aggressive move to do sanctioning against China, isn't it?
Yeah, well, China's had its own way for a number of years now. What China uses inside the country and outside the country is economic development, partnership, but tolerate what we want to do politically and geopolitically. And by and large, that's what we have done with the Chinese. I think their aggressive stance in the South China Sea and in the East China Sea is detrimental to U.S. interest and certainly to that of our allies. They're trampling on our allies. We have got to have a get-tough policy with China regardless of North Korea. And I believe there's reason to accommodate President Trump has much to do with their aggressive policy in the Pacific, because they want to buy time for that as they try to help President Trump and North Korea. But it remains to be seen if they're really going to help.
Very important there. Let me turn to our nation's cybersecurity, General. There's a growing concern now, and certainly this morning it's really ramped up, that a new kind of malware could potentially knock out the power grids. Malicious code was discovered by a computer security company studying a December attack of the Ukrainian electrical grid. These researchers are saying that an attack could leave the cities in the U.S. dark for days. How can the U.S. prevent something like this from happening? How worried are you about that?
Well, we've said for years, this is well known obviously within the utility companies, but utility grids are part of our critical infrastructure, banking and financial system as well, transportation system, etc., nuclear capability. The nuclear capability is protected. Everything else is somewhat exposed. Utility grids are dramatically exposed because they're using old cyber capabilities that go back a generation. And what we've seen here, and I think what's got people's attention, is that it's very sophisticated, to be sure, but it can be simply used. So you don't need the resources of a nation state to use this. Somebody with some capability could use it. for whatever the reason for it. It could be domestic terrorism, it could be foreign terrorism, etc. The other thing is that Russia was likely behind this because it was an attack on Ukraine's utility grid back in December of 2016, and it was discovered as a result of trying to do the forensics on what happened. How did that attack take place when they found this malware? But overall, this capability could not take down the entire utility grid in the United States. It would just take down a small portion of it, and it would be out for days. And it would be a hardship, to be sure.
It's a hardship, but at least it's not the whole country and as severe as some people expect. What about the trouble for the F-35 program? The Air Force indefinitely grounded a squadron of fighter jets in Arizona after 5 pilots suffered oxygen deprivation mid-flight. In each case, the backup oxygen system kicked in. So that allowed the pilots to land safely. But this F-35 program has been plagued by these issues. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this thing's got everybody sort of scratching their head. What is going on here? Because it's happening at this Air Force base where we have 55 F-35s. There's 220 worldwide, but it's the only place this is happening. So something is wrong there, obviously. They've shut it down to try to bring all the engineers and scientists together, to include Lockheed Martin, who manufactured this airplane, to try to get to the bottom of it. I mean, we should be able to figure out why our pilots are losing consciousness inside that airplane and having to go to the backup system. And certainly it is a potentially dangerous situation, but it's sort of troubling. Usually when you have a mechanical failure, a system failure, you'll see it throughout the fleet, but it's only happened in this one base. So it remains to be seen what's going on.
We'll watch that. General, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for weighing in.
Yeah, good talking to you, Maria.
Appreciate it. Always great to talk with you as well. General Jack Keane joining us.